This is the iPhone XS Max, and this is the iPhone 10. I've been using the XS Max for about 3 months now. It's going to be 3 months in a couple of days, and I used this phone the entire year last year. And the one thing that I haven't been able to figure out till date is, was this upgrade worth it? Now, what I mean by worth is, it's solely up to everybody on their own, because for me, some things might be worth it, that's not going to be worth it to you. For you, some things might be worth it, that won't be worth it for me. So I'm going to try to stay as general as I can on the subject, but I often see that there's just some things people value more than I do, and it goes vice versa. So worth always comes down to each individual person. How much is something worth to you is not going to be worth the same thing to me. So let's get into it and let's compare these two phones. Now, the thing is, I want to make it very clear. Generally, when I'm comparing two smartphones, it comes down to me comparing them on 5 different aspects: software, hardware, performance, camera, and audio. Now, in this one, it's going to be tough to compare software because they're exactly the same. So I'm going to not do my traditional 5 different aspects and then whichever wins the most is the better phone. I think in this one it's going to have to change up a little bit just because of how similar both of these phones are. So starting off, let's talk about the hardware on these two phones. Some of the key changes we get this year are we get slightly louder speakers, an always welcome addition. The performance on the 10 of the speakers was always awesome. The dual stereo speakers, they sounded very loud, they were clear, they did not get like jarry, they had very good performance overall, and they got significantly loud as well. So that was a great speaker system to have. I honestly didn't expect anything better than that this year, but Apple did go ahead and give us better speakers on the XS. Now, it's not a huge jump, but you can definitely tell the difference immediately when you switch over. That's something that you're going to be able to tell. I'll show you guys later on in the video what I mean by that. Moving on, let's talk about the new battery, especially on the XS Max. So the XS Max got a whole lot larger battery than the XS and the 10, and that's something that I am very happy about. The battery life on the 10 for me was never good. I always suffered, but with the XS Max, I'm sorry, I want to clarify, I've been using the XS Max. It's been amazing. I get consistent 7 to 8 hours of screen on time every day on a single charge, and I no longer have to look for a charger halfway through the day at like 3 or 4 o'clock. I can get through the entire day without an additional charge, which has been the first time I can do this ever since I've owned an iPhone. Moving on, let's talk about the eSIM functionality. So the Apple has finally implemented dual SIM. Dual SIM is very popular in Asian countries. Out in the East, it's very popular because a lot of people like to have 2 SIM cards, 2 different phone numbers, usually from different networks, because connections here can be spotty and they're not as expensive. Out in the West, in the US, Europe, it's just phone service is so expensive. Generally, people don't get 2 different services. They buy one, and the quality is just good enough that you don't have to have a second one just to make things work. But, you know, dual SIM has been such a common thing across so many Android phones for years. Apple finally implementing it is just a really nice addition. I was not expecting it, I'll be very honest. I was very surprised with this because I didn't think Apple would do it. A lot of flagships don't, but I'm glad Apple did this year because it's just, whoever needs it, it helps them a lot. Personally, I don't, because I have a bunch of other phones I can always just have a second SIM in. But for a lot of people, especially if you travel, having a option to have a second SIM in the phone is amazing. Now, there is a caveat. This is not just like a 2 physical SIMs in the phone type of deal. You can only do that if you have a Chinese variant iPhone. If you have a iPhone XS, XR, XS Max bought anywhere else in the world, the issue is you're going to have 1 physical SIM and 1 eSIM. eSIMs are not widely supported yet. There's only a few carriers around the world that are supporting it. I'm sure as time goes on, everybody's going to jump on board, but currently a lot of countries only have 1 or 2, maybe even no carriers that support this. So do keep that in mind. If you do buy this for the dual SIM functionality, make sure your network supports it before you pull the trigger on the purchase. And otherwise, hardware is just very similar between the two phones. Both use the same stainless steel and glass design. The camera's in the same location. The XS is slightly a bit like millimeters off. It's a little bit different, but otherwise, in terms of hardware design, very similar. You won't be able to tell very easily unless you're a very Apple fanboy person who can just tell everything apart. Now, there is one new gold color option with the 10s. That's really nice. If somebody's looking for a little bit of extra splash of color, you have that option. The 10 didn't have it. But that's really not something to brag about because colors are colors. You can buy anything. So let's move on to software. Now, software is the place where I really can't say anything because they both share the same software. All the features remain same across the phone. There's a very few software differences. The only real software differences you're going to find is in the camera app and with the Max version, where it'll get some of the features that the Plus series iPhone has, like when you tilted a Apple app on the side, you get some extra information on the right. So software-wise, not that big of a deal. You couldn't go wrong with either of them because they're the same exact software. And now let's move on and talk about performance. Performance is going to be a tough one here because if we talk about it today, right now, how both the phones perform, they're identical. There's almost nothing to separate them. And if you gave me a 10s, if you gave me a 10, told me it was a 10s, and I wasn't allowed to like inspect or anything, I was just using it, there is no way I could tell you that this is not the 10s because the performance across the board is so good. It is extremely quick. Both these processors are very, very good. The A12 on the new 10s is a step ahead, but right now, since iOS is so optimized, the A11 chip, the last generation chip, is just as good. So you're not really missing out. But a few years down the road, that's going to change. It's definitely going to handle these new updates a lot better than the A11. But that's the thing you go through every year. Now, the newer the processor you have, the better it's going to be as you move into the future. And moving on, I'm going to show you guys two clips of the same song on the iPhone played through the speakers. Tell me what you guys think about it. I could clearly hear a difference in real life, but often in video, through video, it's hard to convey the differences. But I'm going to give it my best shot here. So with that done, let me know what you guys thought about that audio comparison. The 10s, I'm telling you, in person it is just a lot. It's not a lot, but it's definitely noticeable, the changes in how better it is. Now moving on to the most important differentiating factor between these two phones, in my opinion, the camera. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of sample photos I took both on the 10 and 10s, as well as video, and I'm going to try to get you guys to understand what the difference is between the two and how they perform. And once we're done, we'll talk about everything rounded up. Alright guys, so let's start off with the iPhone 10 and 10s Max's rear camera, and right off the bat, the one thing you guys are going to notice is the 10 looks a lot more deeper saturated, and the 10s Max doesn't. It just looks a little bit more flat. And that's actually a good thing, in my opinion, because when you look at it, look at the background. Near the top left, on the 10, everything is just blown out of proportion. Exposure is just killing it there. Whereas on the 10s Max, you guys can actually see that behind the trees there's a building. It's a little bit yellow, and that detail is just completely missed on the iPhone 10. And one thing that a lot of people do prefer is with the 10s Max, the photos are a lot more true to life, so if you want to edit them later, you can. With a 10, it's already looking pretty saturated, so at this point, editing it more probably wouldn't work out. So continuing on this trend of the iPhone 10 being a little bit more saturated, a little more punchy, the photo this time doesn't seem to lose any details. In fact, it does highlight a little bit more of the colors, especially on the leaf that has that little bit of pink. Now, overall, the XS Max is definitely the one that looks true to life. I took this photo, and when I looked at it, it looks very similar to what it's looking like on the XS Max, but the iPhone X looks more punchy. It's definitely more social media ready, if you know what I mean. Now, in this photo, I noticed another trend starting to form, and that is that the iPhone X has a lot more of a warmer hue than the iPhone XS Max, which is a little bit cooler. It's actually not even that cool, it's just very neutral compared to the iPhone X, which is a lot more yellowish. The whites look a lot more yellower than the iPhone XS Max. Otherwise, in this shot, details, exposure, everything is almost pretty similar on both of them. Again, the 10 does have a little bit of a more stronger, punchier green on some of the leaves, but overall I think that the XS Max here is the better photo for sure. Now here's another picture that will go to demonstrate that having the darker, more saturated color, the picture is not the best thing always, because when you look at the exposure, while the sky is blown out in both of them, if you look at the leaves on the iPhone XS Max's photo, you guys can just see so much more detail compared to the iPhone X, where they all just kind of look black, and they don't even look like leaves. I don't even know what they look like. They just there's not a lot of detail left there because of the overexposed sun. So this was shot right into direct sunlight, by the way, if I wasn't clear about that. So in direct sunlight, the iPhone X just completely hides those elements. The XS Max does a very good job of keeping it a lot more noticeable. Again, this is a very similar shot to the one I showed you before. So you guys can just see that despite, you know, being in direct sunlight, the XS just has so much more detail in these leaves. They just look a lot lighter, and it definitely looks like there's a lot more information captured here when compared to the iPhone X. Now, the last two photos have had the trend of exposure just being perfect on the iPhone X, XS Max over the 10, and this photo proves it the best. Now, when we look at the leaf, both of them seem to be perfectly in focus. However, look to the top left and bottom right of the leaf, and you guys will start to notice how much better the XS Max is with exposure in the background, and whereas the 10 has kind of just blown everything out. You can barely tell that there's anything behind the leaf. It just looks like a cloud of white. Whereas the XS Max, it's so much better and just a lot nicer in my opinion. So as you guys have seen, there's a trend that's forming where the 10 immediately looks better, but when you look at it closely, you start to realize that the XS Max might be better. And in this case, it's definitely that. Initially, the 10 looks brighter and the XS Max looks a little bit dull. It's not as bright. However, when you start looking at details, it'll blow your mind. So the computer right behind the phones, that's turned off. However, with the 10, just notice how much noise there is, especially towards the top right. There's absolutely none of that on the iPhone XS Max's picture. Not to mention, look at the noise, overall on the iPhone X's photo compared to the XS. The XS has almost no noise, and you can see that. And it's not like it's smoothing over either, because the iPhone XS Max has more detail as well. So if you see my stickers on the computer, so the one that says Jane, the one on the 10 is quite a bit blurry, but when we look at the one from the XS Max, it's very clear and there's almost no noise to be discerned from it. And again, this photo, I think this is one photo where you'd say that when you look at both, you probably wouldn't immediately say the 10 is better. And yeah, the XS Max is just a little bit better here, because look at how perfectly it's balanced the light. It's not overkill, whereas it's not too dull either, where you can clearly tell the carbon fiber design of this case, but you're not losing details, or you're not losing it's not a dark image overall. Whereas the 10, I think, is just a little bit too bright, and it's doing a bad job of kind of keeping the details of the carbon fiber case. Also, if you just look in the background as well, right next to the phone on the left, you guys can see there's a little the pads of paper there. They have a little bit of a plastic kind of end there that looks so much more clear and discernible on the iPhone XS Max's photo compared to the iPhone X. And I think overall the iPhone XS Max definitely has a leg up when it comes to low light performance. So moving on, let's look at the front camera. So this is a front camera, just normal mode, nothing special. And this is not the, you notice that light, just the ray of light on the iPhone X. that was not one time. I tried to retake this photo 2 times. I tried to retake it again after I did a few more tests, and I still just got that ray of light. So this was in direct sunlight, by the way. The camera was facing right towards the sun, so even though both were facing towards the sun, I'm not horribly, just shadowed out in this image. You can tell very clearly, but the one thing you will notice is that the iPhone X's photo is a much darker. My hair looks a lot darker. My beard just looks a lot thicker than it actually is, and my t-shirt just looks way more darker than it is. In reality, it's a very light green, which you can tell very clearly from the XS Max. So again, the XS Max does a great job of keeping the colors realistic. So moving on, as I said, there was that trend of the 10 having warmer colors and the XS having cooler colors, and you can clearly see that in my face. On the iPhone X, my face looks a lot more golden than it is. On the XS Max, it looks a lot more true to life. It looks a lot cooler. And even with the leaves in the background, you guys can clearly tell right to the left of my face, near the top, a little bit towards the top, you guys can tell that the leaves are a lot more yellowish green instead of being just, a little bit of a cooler colored green, which is a very easy way to tell that the iPhone XS Max is doing a little bit better of a job trying to not oversaturate these images. So once again, we come to a photo where the 10 seems like it is the better shot than the XS Max. However, it's actually not the case. Immediately my eyes go to the background, the granite tiles on the wall. The 10 just looks so much brighter. You can see the details just got punched. The saturation is just right. It feels good. But if you start looking towards my face, you start to notice some issues. The hair, my hair is a lot darker, and you can actually start to see where detail is lost when you compare the two. Look at my glasses. In the reflection of my glasses, you guys can clearly tell a lot more detail is there in the iPhone XS Max's photo compared to the iPhone X. And again, the same trend where my beard just looks so much thicker and darker than it actually is. It is not that thick or dark. And the worst part here has to be the t-shirt. Just look at how overtly green this t-shirt looks. It is not that green. It is a very light green color, but because of the design and the lighting and iPhone just the 10 oversaturating the image just a little bit, it looks like it's a very dark green t-shirt. And the XS Max does such a good job of keeping it real to life compared to the 10. Now, if you showed me both of these images and didn't tell me which phone took them, and you only gave me 5 seconds to decide, I'd probably say the 10 is the better phone. But as I look into it more and more and understand the concept of photography and what photographers are looking for, the more and more I realize that the XS Max just has that much desired, true to life color representation. Okay, so here is a portrait mode photo of both of these phones, and they, as you can see, they still don't do that good of a job when it comes to hair detection, especially my hair. I don't know if it's just the way it's styled or what, but I have never been able to get the iPhone to get a perfect blur effect on my hair. It just never works. It cuts off some part or the other. The Google Pixel never does this. It's perfect all the time, but I don't know what's going on with the XS and 10. The one thing I will tell you is that the XS does a much better job. It doesn't blur out my hair as much. Also, there's just a lot more detail in my hair. The rest of the photo is actually so comparable. If you told me they came from the same phone, I would have probably said, yeah, that makes sense. One thing I will take note of, though, is that the XS seems to be smoothing out my face a little bit. The details are slightly less noticeable than they are on the 10. But barring that fact, I think that the XS Max probably just because of the way it's not blurred out my hair as much as the 10, that's the better shot. But overall, still not good in the concept of front-facing reality portrait mode photos. Alright, so final photo, and this is a low-light indoor photo selfie. And the one thing I go back and forth on which one I like a little bit more, and I think I'm going to settle for the iPhone XS Max because the XS Max is trying to keep my face, the skin tone consistent. If you look at the iPhone X, my skin is like so many different colors. It looks like I basically have patches of different color of skin. whereas the XS Max looks a lot more natural. It looks like the light is actually a little bit more, like, it looks like light is reflecting and not my skin just having patches of different color. I mean, details are very similar on both the photos. The 10 did somehow just completely lose all the detail on my t-shirt when you compare it to the XS Max. Otherwise, I think both of these photos are very similar. But as I said again, just because the XS Max did a little bit better of a job with just the details and not going overboard with the, my skin looking like it's all patched up, I'm going to give it to the XS Max. How's it going, guys? So this is the front camera test of the iPhone XS Max on the right and the iPhone 10 on the left. Now, from what I can see right off the bat, the 10 seems to be a lot darker. Like, my hair seems to be missing a lot of detail compared to the XS. Not to mention that the XS is recording in 60 frames per second, whereas the 10 is locked in at 30 because it did not have that option. So let me know what you guys think about it. Honestly, it's a tough call. I like the more detail on the XS, but I like the darker look of the 10 as well. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Alright guys, so this is the 1080p 60 FPS rear camera test on the iPhone XS Max on the right and the iPhone 10 on the left. Let me know what you guys think. Mostly I think video quality is almost comparable. The only real difference you're going to notice is stereo audio. However, since I am recording at a very basic level with no real directional audio, I don't think you'll be really able to pick it up. However, it is one of the best videos on the market, no doubt. So both of them look really sharp on the screen, but it's not until it's in post where you actually know what's up. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Alright guys, so here is the rear camera test of the iPhone XS Max on the right and the iPhone 10 on the left. Indoors, low light. Let me know what you guys think. I think that the XS just seems a lot brighter on the screen. We never know though. Usually with these cases, it's not until I have it in my editing station where I know that what's going on. But let me know what you guys think about the details and how everything's looking, and if you guys are happy with both of them. Alright guys, so here is the front camera test in low light indoors on the iPhone XS Max on the right and the iPhone 10 on the left. Now, I think it's very clear here that the XS Max is doing very poorly, and as I mentioned in a previous video, the XS Max just has a very bad front camera. The 10 isn't anything better, but just in this low light video, you guys can see how much of a difference it is, because you can barely see my face here. I mean, at least on the display of the XS, I can't see anything. Whereas the 10, at least you can make out my face. So let me know what you guys think. And yeah, this is not looking good for the XS Max video on the front camera. All right, guys, so that rounds up all 5 rounds. Now, at this point, I just like to say that the camera on the XS Max is so damn impressive. It really blew me away. I did not expect it to be this good. It wasn't until I started taking photos right next to the 10 when I first got it, a week in, when I really noticed how good it was. It was mind-blowing to me how much that Smart HDR was helping it, and how much these new feature additions, not even the big ones, just the small ones like the adjustable bokeh effect on portrait photos, was helping the overall camera experience just get so much better. Video has always been amazing. The addition of the stereo recording for the audio on video was amazing feature, and it improves the video quality even more. So now I can definitely, without worry, get video on my XS, which I can upload to YouTube, and nobody would be able to tell that it's actually just a camera phone. I'm sorry, a phone camera. It would be very hard to differentiate it from a dedicated camera setup, which costs thousands of dollars. And that was, and that's been the case for the 10 as well. The cameras are really good, but the XS takes it a step above, which is hard to understand how they do it. It's just so astonishing to me. Now, rounding this off, what I need to say is that there's going to be 2 categories of people here. 1, the people who already have the 10 and are considering buying the XS. 2, people who don't have either and they're looking to jump into either the 10 or the XS, and since they're so similar, they're confused about which one to buy. And I'm going to explain what my logic is here. If you already have the 10, for 90% of the people out there, I think the XS is not worth the jump. Now, the 10% of people, the reason I think you'd want to jump would be the eSIM functionality, so that means the dual SIM feature, or the camera. those are two features I can definitely understand why you'd want to upgrade for. Those are two features you can't get on the 10, and that's going to be something that could be a selling factor to you if you have the 10. But I think for the majority of people, if you have the 10, stay with it, buy the next year phone. That's probably going to be even better than the 10s, and you won't regret waiting a little bit. Now, if you're the second group of people who are looking to buy either of these phones and considering which one would be better, generally I usually stick to the older phones because they're cheaper and they're almost the same. I usually always do that when I'm comparing iPhone generations one to the next. This time I'm not going to say that. This time is going to be, it's surprising to me too, but I'm going to recommend buying the 10s over the 10. Why? Because the 10s has still held its value really well, so you're probably not going to find one for less than $600, maybe even $700. And I personally think if you're spending $700, the extra $300 is well worth it for the A12 chip, for the better cameras, and the new processor. That's did I already mention the processor? I think I did. I meant the eSIM functionality. So those three things are definitely worth it. If not, even if you're not going to be using the eSIM, just having it on your phone is a helpful feature. And the fact that these phones hold so much value, again, that's something that you might want to consider when you buy the phone. So that wraps it up for this video, guys. Since I came from the iPhone 10, that's why I keep considering in my mind if it's worth it or not. I am 100% sure if I came from the 7 Plus that this would be an upgrade I would not even blink about. That's how good it is. The 10s overall is a great phone, but not great for iPhone 10 users. And that's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think, especially about the camera differences. They impressed me so much, they blew me away, and they actually made me reconsider the old versus new, because I always go with old since that one is a little bit cheaper and gives you almost everything else. Let me know down in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.